Good evening, this is our news bulletin for tonight. Niue's delegation to the World War I commemorations in France have met with government before they depart in early September. Amatafua and a team of researchers continue with their research and awareness programs for the protection of whales whilst in Niue waters. Niue undergoes a second round of consultations for the family law bill that focuses on the protection of families. Soil research is about to be conducted for conventional and organic farming over the next 2 years. Niue has a delegation that will be travelling to France for the World War I centenary commemorations following months of preparation and fundraising. Premier Toke Tahalangi met with the tour group at the Whalefono on Tuesday to farewell the 15 village representatives and one high school student who were selected by families and villagers. In April of this year, the Niue Returned Servicemen's Association began their selection process. That has not gone without some skepticism, but the tour group has been finalised and are prepared for what will be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The tour group will travel first to Belgium and on to northern France, where 2 Niuean soldiers are buried. The itinerary continues to the Battle of Somme commemoration with the New Zealand delegation and contingent, and the official tour will continue and end in Hornchurch, England, where 4 Niuean soldiers were laid to rest before this tour group returns to Niue. The team are due to depart on the 6th of September. A whale research team working in collaboration with Amatafua are back on the island to continue with research that will create a better understanding of the migratory patterns of whales that come into Niue waters. Amatafua was founded in 2005, and the team has been working for the past 2 weeks conducting research and also taking senior students on Niue High School to witness how the research is conducted. On Wednesday evening, the team presented their research at a local establishment, Coral Gardens, to give an insight on what types of whales are found in Niue, as well as the regulations and safety precautions. The whale research team have volunteered their time, but Amatafua founder Whiawhia Rex says they have been fortunate to receive funding from another local NGO, Towhia Niue, that will enable them to continue with the research and other educational activities.
Amatafua's job is just to maintain communication between tourism and some of the reports back to us, and just maintaining good working relationships with the operators as well as government agencies, because primarily we're meant to focus on education because the regulations have come out. We really want to focus on strengthening with tourism and the Niue Yacht Club, especially building greater awareness and education to tourists that come to Niue, because that's where foremost is much more productive, I think, when it comes to enforcement. And following compliance and monitoring, that's when we can strengthen fisheries capacity to carry out their enforcement side.
The recent endorsement of the whale watching regulations by government is also another milestone for Amatafua, who have lobbied for years to have legislation in place to protect whales while in Niue waters, but especially calves, who are imperative to the survival of these endangered species.
First and foremost, the population we're dealing with is an endangered species. Niue is a whale sanctuary. We developed the regulations to increase protection of newborn calves, namely because they travel so far from the Antarctic, their feeding grounds, and they come up here especially to birth, calve, and mate. And there's hardly any newborn calves here each year in Niue. So the increased protection allows the mom and calf to do what they're meant to do here, to feed and nurture her calf. So that calf is able to get as much strength as possible to return back on their 5,000-kilometer journey. That's a long way. So sometimes when you see their backbones, they're really emaciated, or in other words, you can see their vertebrae and they're very skinny. So we want to respect the mom and calf especially, and I commend some of the whale watch operators who have already done that. While it may be practiced elsewhere in the region, Niue, I highly commend what they've done here, and it's applying the precautionary principle, whereby under international law we're meant to have increased protection, where the best science practices tell you that we're meant to do that.
A covert operation was also done where a team member posing as a tourist on one of the whale watching tours, was able to observe the methods of navigation as well as observation practices.
We've got some really good new findings this year. We documented off Halangingi the Cuvier's beaked whale, so that's new for us. We've got new recordings of the humpback whale songs this year, and we've already identified new humpback whales. We haven't had the chance as yet to compare where in the region with the other photo ID that has been collected over the years in the region to compare where their migratory pathways have been.
Omutafua will be holding another presentation of their research and new findings this coming Sunday at the Senate Matawai, and are hoping for more local participation. Niue is working towards completing legislation that focuses on the protection of families, with a second lot of consultations this week to review the draft of Niue's family law bill. Niue does not have a Bill of Rights that guarantees fundamental rights or freedom from discrimination, but there are policies and legislation that make reference to human rights, and this bill will incorporate different elements and legal protection for families. The first phase and consultations were held in May of last year to capture all information and realities of Niue, including existing pieces of legislation and policies which make up this bill. The work is supported under the gender policy and is not new, but it is a continuation following on from the Family Law Code, and also incorporates provisions in the draft Family Protection Bill, which captures all forms of violence. The Family Law Bill development process has been a combined effort through the Ministry of Social Services with assistance from the Regional Rights Resource Team from SVC.
We have a bill and there's clear steps set out. It's quite a broad and comprehensive bill. So it starts with marriage. When people want to get married, there are certain formalities that have to be taken. I think in regards to the youth as well, there's a certain age that we have to also look at to see whether children or adults, when do they become adults so that they can get married. Also, we're looking at counseling as well. So knowing that these are family issues and going to the court is not necessarily the best option. Sometimes we want to talk it over in the community. So in the bill we also have counseling guidelines, some counseling guidelines in there. One of the biggest issues that's raised a lot of comments and discussions is adoption. So which court do people go to if they want to adopt? Talking about the different challenges around adoption, because in Niue, there's also a strong link with children and the land. So if another child is adopted, what are the implications of that on land? In addition to that, there's also a part on maintenance for children, custody, access for children. So who do they live with? When do they have access with another parent if they are only living with one parent? And then also looking at children, there's instances where there's child abuse. So it's not just, hitting of children, but sometimes, parents or the family might be in a situation where they may be arguing or they say things that traumatize the child. So also having a definition for what are the types of child abuses that happen in Niue, and then coming up with mechanisms. So mechanisms which are basically what steps should be taken when there is child abuse, who should report, and also in terms of the steps, who takes the steps. So there's social services, looking at the fact that there's the police, if it's an abuse that amounts to a criminal offense, and also looking at other community leaders that also have a part to play, because these are families, these are members of the community. And finally, there's domestic violence, so where it's not just a child, but maybe other members of the family within the household who are subject to domestic violence. So setting out, again, specific steps on who does what.
The consultations this week has seen extensive support from key partners and stakeholders from government, the judiciary, including legal aid, as well as defense councils and non-government organizations across the civil sector, faith-based organizations, and community groups. There is a fair bit of work left to be done before this comprehensive piece of legislation is endorsed by Parliament. A soil expert with over 20 years' knowledge of organic farming in the Cook Islands is in Niue at the moment to conduct a week-long workshop about alternative ways Niue can cultivate the land for farming purposes. Niue's Organic Farmers Association was established more than 10 years ago, and the locals are still cultivating the land in the conventional way. Organic farming practices has taken a foothold in Niue, and those at the workshop indicated that local farmers are now thinking conservatively about their land cultivation practices.
The workshop is for establishing soil resilience for climate change. So what we're actually looking at is a 2-year scientific trial as part of our capacity building project for youth. And the trial involves comparing conventional agriculture to organic agriculture. And so we're going to compare all the scientific data that we're going to take from the soil.
It is very important that farmers who have been cultivating the land the traditional way are shown alternative ways of how they can cultivate the land conservatively and adapt to the impact brought on by climate change. And prevailing response from those taking part was that while conventional farming is a long-held traditional practice, organic farming may be the way of the future because of the hostile environment brought on by climate change. There will be a trial period of 2 years to compare data from the two farming practices.
Niue is one of the countries that they haven't got a project in, so that's one of the reasons. One other reason is that Niue is one of the longest going organic farming association, so I think it's appropriate for this kind of trials to be established in Niue. In the Solomons, we've been farming for the last 20 years without pesticides and fertilizers, and we still produce and sell crops just like any other farm. And I think by sharing those experiences, we can minimize or do away with the use of pesticides and fertilizers, and just grow food in a natural way that is healthy and can maintain healthy population.
One of the local planters told BCN News that Niue's subsistence cultivation practices could be a thing of the past if people latch on to organic farming, especially if it proves to be economically viable and environmentally friendly. That concludes our news bulletin for this evening. Do join us again for our next news bulletin on Tuesday next week, and do enjoy the weekend ahead.